Hello everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Eternal Insiders. I'm Ben Vickers, promoter of Eternal MMA, and this is...
Cam O'Neill, also promoter of Eternal MMA.
What we're going to do is, every week we're going to bring some content to you guys. First week, we'll just chat. Next week, we'll have a guest, and vice versa. When it's just Cam and I, we'll discuss how Eternal came to be and the road that we've taken to get to where we're at today. And then obviously when we have the guests, they'll all be linked to Eternal in some way, shape or form, and we'll get their sort of experiences on Eternal and we'll go from there. So, but this first week, what we're going to do, as we had such a hectic start to the year, we're going to sort of wrap up and debrief you guys on what happened in those mad 3 weeks where we did 3 shows across 9,500 kilometers in 2 different countries in 3 different capital cities. So I'll hand you over to Cam, and he'll start us off with his remarkably timely entry to the airport and how he nearly missed a plane to New Zealand. He's a Cam special.
Yeah, so we were very ambitious trying to do 3 events across 14 days, and the first one was an international event, our first international event in New Zealand. We're heading to Auckland on UFC Auckland weekend. With Eternal, I've lost count of how many flights that I've made across Australia, and there's never been too much of an issue up until we decided to go international and I forgot my passport. Didn't have time to get back and get my passport, so we had a bit of rushing about and got the passport delivered to the airport as I stood at the bottom of the stairs of the plane with my case, not allowed to board until it turned up, and I got on the plane 5 minutes before it took off. So yeah, it was fine. Timing was good.
That's a pretty standard sort of Cam story. For those of you that don't know Cam, he is notoriously lastminute.com. It should actually be on his gravestone. I'm surprised I made it here on time. Pretty last minute. Is that fair to say, Cam, do you reckon?
Yeah, no, look, that's definitely fair to say. I do think my timekeeping has got better recently, but in isolation and in lockdown at the moment, I can't prove that to anybody, so you'll just have to take my word for it.
Well, I think before we start, what a lot of people don't know is you're actually training to be a firefighter at the moment up in Townsville.
And look, this is one of the other reasons why we're doing the podcast, or we're bringing the podcast back in this type of format. Obviously, we don't have any other new content to bring you in terms of fights or events, and we wanted to keep getting some form of information out to you across social media, and then come up with a great idea of doing our podcast again. And as you can see, we're starting off in pretty humble surroundings as I sit in a 6 metre by 3 metre room up in Townsville, where I'm going to be living until mid-July, training to be a firefighter, and Ben's in his home office. But we're going to let this thing grow and hope to bring you some good content.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well start off with the elephant in the room, which is not you overweight bastard. It's it's the whole COVID-19 pandemic and where that sort of left us, I guess. For me, I've went from probably working 90-hour weeks, running 3 businesses. Obviously, for those that don't know anything about me, I own and I'm head coach at Scrappy MMA, formerly the MMA Clinic in Perth. And I just recently, late last year, opened a new gym called The Set in Marmion, which is a coastal suburb in Perth. So I was running those 2 gyms, and then also obviously running Eternal as well with Cam. So to go from fucking 0 to hero, or hero to 0, overnight has been a massive culture shock to me. And to be quite honest, it's all a bit of a struggle. Kicking about the house all day. So I think you're quite fortunate in the fact that at least you've got something to get your teeth into every day.
Yeah, no, look, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I think I was rather naive pre-COVID-19 at thinking I could do this and run Eternal full time as well. This training is really pretty intense, and as you say, the amount of hours that we put into Eternal every single week, I'm probably up around about the 40 or the 50 hours a week easily with that as well. So, it's slight, I hate to say it, but it's been a slight blessing in disguise for me.
Oh, mate. I remember I was a fireman. So I did my fire brigade training school in London in 2004. So when you said you was getting into the fire brigade, and then you said you were going to run internal shows at the same time, I was like, well, mate, I don't know if training school and promoting a fight event is actually going to happen. Like, it was ambitious, and like everything that we do, I'm sure we would have pulled it off, but it would have been fucking mental trying to learn everything you need to learn and perform every day in what is a tough course, and try and do all the shit that goes into preparing fight events. Might have been interesting.
Yeah, without a doubt. And look, as everybody probably knows, we don't do one fight event at a time. We probably have had 2 or 3 events that we were organising while I was doing this training. In fact, next weekend we were meant to be holding our first ever amateur Grand Prix at the Sydney Fitness Show. Obviously that's been cancelled. Sorry, not cancelled, postponed up until October.
No, September 25th.
It's been postponed to September, so that pushes us back a little bit. But look, we're aiming at being back on for July, hopefully. But we just have to stay fluid with the restrictions and how they go in terms of fighters being able to train and people being able to travel interstate, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be a long time before you're allowed to have thousands of people in a room together. So we might have to be quite dynamic in how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, we'll definitely adapt and overcome. We'll work it out.
We'll figure it out, yeah. And I'm sure once Australia's open again, we'll get shows going again. And
yeah, without a doubt. So that probably takes us back to New Zealand, Eternal 50th show, international.
Handmade the plane.
Got on the plane, got off the other side, and we had a good little setup there. We had a good Airbnb with a good crew in it. We brought a lot of the team members over with us. We brought the digital team from Emperor over with us as well and stayed at the Airbnb. And I think we gathered a lot of good content there, put together some good fights, and crowned a new heavyweight champion over one night Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand's hectic. Like for me, flying from Perth, I had to fly to Melbourne, wait around in Melbourne. My flight was delayed in Melbourne due to storms. I ended up traveling like 10 hours or something. Or flying time was 10 hours, but I think it was nearer 15 hours by the time I'd left home and then arrived at the Airbnb in New Zealand. So it was a mad, hectic flight over there. And then straight into it, really. Like, we hit the ground running. Emperor didn't arrive for a day, so we actually went to the venue for the first time ever on the Wednesday morning of fight week, which was pretty fucking mental. Like,
I arrived in the country for the first time ever on Tuesday afternoon. I'd never even set foot in New Zealand.
So
4 days before we were running an event.
For any aspiring promoters or anyone doing anything remotely event orientated, I wouldn't recommend that strategy. We were kind of relying on people in New Zealand, which was great. We had a little network of people there. But what is very prevalent in New Zealand is, yeah, don't worry about it, bro. It'll be all right, bro. They've got this super, like, they are the most chilled out people I've ever come across. But
definitely the most chilled out security guards I've ever came across.
Yeah, I renewed my security career that weekend as well, which was not planned. But yeah, it was definitely an eye opener, and realizing that some people operate on slightly different timescales and slightly different senses of urgency. I actually loved Auckland so much. It was really stressful, but actually Auckland and the Kiwis, it was amazing. Like, I really enjoyed being there, but we were under the pump. Like, there's no doubt about that. It was a race against time.
Yeah, we got it done though. We got it done. We pulled off a decent event, and packed our shit up and headed back to Australia.
Yeah, well, you can gloss over it like that. I think we did something pretty spectacular in the little Grand Prix that we ran, and Ricky Beechin coming home victorious and having those two heavyweight fights that went the distance. I think all the heavyweight fights went the distance that night. Did they not?
They did. And Ricky was the smallest of the four competitors. He was the lightest. at the weigh-ins, and they went the distance twice and took the strap on.
Yeah, he had a pretty remarkable weekend, to be honest, because then the next day at the UFC Auckland was the next day, and Jimmy Crute had a big win, and Jimmy Crute is obviously one of Ricky's training partners, and he got Ricky on his feet in front of the whole arena and shouted him out and told everyone of his exploits the night before. And, I think that'll be a super memorable weekend for Ricky, and I hope one of the best weekends of his career. And I'm really pleased that we managed to get him in that tournament, and he is where he is now, the inaugural eternal heavyweight champion. I mean, no one can ever take that away from him. It's pretty special.
So now we're just looking to fill the light heavyweight championship, and we'll have all the male championship titles taken.
Yeah, where's the light heavyweights at? We need to get that gone as soon as we get back. Like, we should look to.
Yeah, let's look at that. But there was a lot of great fights on that New Zealand card. I think Dimps and Blood Diamond was a fantastic fight to watch. Dimps was a special kind of guy. He lost his opponent less than a week out, his original opponent, and it was Carlos Hicks, who was a very experienced kickboxer. But Blood Diamond, who's an even more experienced kickboxer and undefeated in MMA, stuck his hand up, wanted to take the fight, and Dimps didn't even hesitate. I sent him the message. He didn't even want to know who it was. He just sent a message back straight away. It doesn't matter who it is, let's take the fight. And he hung in there for the 3 rounds and took the fight to Blood Diamond. But Blood Diamond seemed to edge it on the judges' scorecard, and what was a terrific fight. Yeah,
it was a great fight. That was one, and any fight that Dimps is in is going to be exciting because he wants to fight. He's a proper fighter. He wants to get out there and throw leather. And Blood Diamond was only too happy to indulge in that. And they brought the best out in each other.
It's a great fight. Obviously, it's on UFC Fight Pass. If anybody has got nothing to do today and they're looking for a fight to watch, that's definitely one I would go back and watch.
Yeah, for sure. So, who else did we have on there? We had the heavyweight.
Carl Van Roon eventually made his MMA debut, multiple times Taekwondo world champion, and he eventually made his MMA debut as an amateur against the experienced Paul McMahon. Fight went to the end of the first round, and Carl Van Roon won with a TKO punches. Other notable fights we probably had on that was BJ Bland picking up another impressive win on an Eternal card. Probably cemented himself in a spot to fight for the Eternal lightweight belt, but immediately after the event he was managed to be lucky enough to be picked up by the PFL, so he's going to be the New Zealand representative in the PFL next year.
Yeah, whether that, I don't know how PFL are going to go, being a foreign entity trying to come into Australia at this time. I'm not sure who's running that, if it's a domestic promotion or if there's, the Americans are coming over to run that. It's going to be difficult for them. So hopefully for BJ that will get sorted out. If not, we'll mop him up and we'll get him back in the cage as soon as we can.
I think PFL have delayed their 2020 season to next year now. So I think he should be available for the rest of this year.
Well, we hope so, because he deserves it. As in the lightweight division, he's definitely the number one contender right now. So, so we'll see how that plays out anyway. And then probably the most intense moment for me was it Taylor Wateri? I forgive my pronunciation, but he had a win and then hit a impromptu hacker with the crowd all joining in afterwards in the cage. It was brilliant to watch.
Yeah, it was really good.
Just a really fitting sort of end to a fight for the first ever New Zealand show, like that live hacker. I love watching it. Like, I'm a big rugby fan, and I love watching a hacker before the international games start. So to see it live and then see the crowd jump up and join in, and how ingrained that is in their culture, that everyone knows how to do it, and people just jump up to their feet and just get involved, and the intensity that they bring, it's quite special. I think that was a special moment.
Yeah, no, it was. It was excellent.
But then, like you say, so we had no time to waste because obviously we were in Perth the next weekend. So I jumped on a plane. I think I watched one fight on the main card of UFC Auckland, and then I was back on the plane, and then back to Perth, and then Cam flew out the Monday morning. back to the Goldie, and then a couple of days later, flew out to Perth.
No passport required.
No passport required, thankfully. So no dramas with that flight. And yeah, straight back into back-to-back shows. It's not the first time we've done back-to-back shows, but it is the first time we've done back-to-back, you know. So there was a lot of stuff that maybe we didn't account for that we ended up sort of having to scramble. And, you know, as we always do, we get to where we need to get to, but it can make it stressful sometimes.
Yeah, without a doubt. And look, I think in terms of 51 and 52, the next two events that we've done, the Perth show and the Gold Coast show, were two of the best that we've ever done. Fantastic fights in Perth, there really was. I'll let you probably cover most of Perth, but I was really impressed with Minnie T. I think he's really starting to come into his own as a accomplished MMA fighter now, as well as, you know, shaking off the tag of just being a Muay Thai fighter. He had a fantastic fight with Jake Carroll. Jake hung in there with him and put up a great fight. But no, the D51 card was stacked. There were some fantastic fights in it.
Yeah, you got the T-shirt on there.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got one of them, just saying.
Yeah, because we lost a couple of the fights on it. I had to juggle it about. We didn't need to redo it. So obviously the featherweight title was meant to be on that card, and which is on the T-shirt, and we ended up moving that over to the Gold Coast the next week, which is just another benefit of us having so many shows. You know, we're not going to leave people sitting idle for too long. If they lose a fight, we'll be able to shuffle them and move them on to the next event and get them a worthy opponent.
Yeah, definitely. So Perth, in a nutshell, was like from amateur. So we had 8 amateur fights and 6 pro fights on that, or 5 pro fights. I can't remember. But the quality from fight 1 to fight 14 or 13 was next level. Like, it's a tribute to the fighters and the coaches in Perth. Like, just the standard was so high. Any of those fights could have masqueraded as pro fights. You know, the levels was exceptional. And some really good performances all across the card. But talking about the main card and the pro fights, obviously Daniel Williams, Mini T, opened up the card. He's one of my fighters, so I won't talk too long about him for want of sounding like a proud father. But he really like crossed over for me in that fight, from being like, he started the crossover with the Chris Wace fight, the way that he sort of handled himself on the ground, managed to get back up to the feet where he needed to be to get the job done and where he's going to be most dangerous. So, and then to go in against Jake, who's an accomplished grappler. You know, Nick Hughes is a genius when it comes to MMA grappling, and his boys are always well drilled and tough and well disciplined. I knew it was going to be a hard fight. And Dan sort of, he loves to fight. Like, what he wants to do is have a hard, action-packed fight, and Jake allowed him to do that because Jake was game too. And Jake was game to indulge in the stand-up as well, which was a credit to him. And yeah, for me, Dan, you know, he got Jake hurt early and thought he was going to finish him, and was at danger of like shooting his bolt, for want of a better word, but managed to sort of bring himself back down, realize that he was getting caught with things because he was over eager. And it was really a really mature performance and a devastating and brutal performance. You know, he had a knockdown with a headshot, he had a knockdown with a body shot, and he had a knockdown with leg kicks. So one, a testament to Daniel's all-round ability in striking, but two, Jake Hull got up from every single bit of adversity until right at the very end when you know the ref stepped in, but Jake was still fighting. So what a tough man, and what a way to start the fight card portion of the show. It was a great fight. Jake had Daniel in danger at the end of the first round, had some good positions on the ground. Dan managed to escape. Yeah, it kind of had everything. And then we moved on to Ryan Robertson, Paul Loga. And Paul, you know, after a disappointing performance for himself in his last showing in Perth against Stephen Ursig, who's a gun, by the way. Don't sleep on that guy. We'll talk more about him in a minute. Paul bounced back in the way that he really needed to. You know, and I think he hit Ryan early with a shot that left Ryan not knowing where he was, and credit to Ryan, his instincts were sort of carrying him through the rest of the fight. But yeah, once Paul gets on top, he's a finisher.
Yeah, it was another good fight. It was another good fight.
And good for Logan. Like, I feel like he's back on track now.
The flyweight's an exciting division that we've got going just now. You know, there's a lot of people moving about in there, switching positions, and nobody falling too far off the radar. So, you know, everybody's going to keeping it competitive, and we've got a couple of other people that we're going to bring into the fold as well over the next couple of months that will make that division even more exciting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I like the smaller weight divisions at the moment in Australia are looking pretty good.
Yeah, Eternal's always right from Eternal 1. Eternal's always been pretty heavy on flyweight and bantamweight divisions. As you say, they're really exciting divisions. You know, the speed and the technique of some of these guys and the output that they deliver is fantastic.
Well, and the featherweight division, which we'll obviously get to a bit later on as well, is it's cranking. And then we had Casey versus Caitlin.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk through that? You must. I mean, obviously, again, for people.
Well, I don't want to sound like a proud father as well, but I'm a proud father there. Casey O'Neill's obviously my daughter, and she was fighting Caitlin McEwen, and a fight that really quite exciting to put together. Caitlin was 5-1 and the number 1 ranked flyweight female in Australia and New Zealand, and Casey was 3-0 and the number 1 ranked strawweight female in Australia. So both girls going out there with a decent pedigree and a decent standard behind them. Fight was at flyweight because he'd moved up that weight, and Caitlin's very, very dangerous, got a lot of submission finishes early on, and we knew that going into the fight that Casey would have to be smart about leaving her arm in places where it shouldn't be left, because Caitlin's got quick hips and would definitely look to lock it up. And the fight went the distance, and you know, I'll probably pass back to Ben because I'll just definitely sound like I'm bigging up my own daughter, but as far as I was concerned, I can't ever remember seeing a female performance like that in Australia, you know, outside of the UFC ever. I think it was completely dominant, and it was really a masterclass in every single position of the fight, standing, down, wrestling. It was just
you fantastic. Do sound like a proud dad. Which
it was it was a fantastic fight. You know, it was.
You know, you have every right to. Like, we've watched Casey, obviously we've watched all Casey's fights, and she started off her career similar to Jack Della with 2 losses. You know, she was 0-2, way too good to be 0-2, but that's where she found herself. You know, and then it's just been on this massive win streak all the way through her amateur career. It's not just the fact that she's been on a win streak; it's the fact that the development you see each time, like. She's adding something to her game each time, and having moved to Tiger full time and working under the tutelage of those guys out there and just living the life, you know, really showed. But for me, what was more impressive than her performance was the amount of enjoyment she got out of it. Like, she loved every second of it. And there's a lot of fighters that don't. You know, there's so much pressure, and there's this and there's that. And she literally, she loves it. You can tell she wants, you would know better than anyone, but she's wanted to do it for so long. Sorry, the boss came in.
Yeah, well, Casey's obviously grew up roundabout watching MMA since she was a very small child. She's kickboxing since she was very young, and you know, even younger than that, I think she used to sit and watch our favourite UFC fighters with me on DVD and on video, which was, she used to like the Phil Baroni era and Chris Lytle and all the guys. You know, she used to strut about the house in our New York badass house coat, and as a young kid, it was a strange upbringing, obviously. But look, it's took her to where she is just now. So
yeah, look, it was fantastic, and Caitlin, you know, is again another one. She's tough as hell. Like, she stayed there, and Casey puts people away, and she couldn't put Caitlin away. And it was a great win for Casey because she's such a fan of Caitlin. Like, Caitlin has almost been the pioneer that Casey's been looking up to. So To get that fight and to get the W was massive. And
yeah, no, it was good. It was good.
And then we had Nico versus Lucas Kaczapik. So Nico Flesses, two veterans of the MMA scene here in Australia. Two guys that probably don't have a record that does him any justice either. Nico in particular, his record is something ridiculous, like 2-7 or something like that. And he's so good. And he started this fight off really well, and it just seems to turn. It just seems to turn for him, and it's. I can't work it out, and I'm sure Nico can't work it out because he knows how good he is. I think he just needs to get in the win column, and I think he'll be back. He just needs to find that confidence again because the skill is undoubtable.
Yeah, we've seen it a couple of times with Nico, even just on Eternal. He's been completely dominant in fights, or he's been looked really, really good in fights, and he's managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. He is much better than his record suggests, and it would be good to see him starting to correct that record a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. It's hard to get fights for him because people know how good he is, but his record is tough for anyone to want to fight. So it takes some real fighters that are prepared to put it all on the line. And Luke is one of those. Luke Kaczapik's fought a who's who of the featherweight division in this country. He's always dangerous.
I think Luke's maybe fought across 3 or 4 weight classes.
Probably, yeah. He's always dangerous. He carries a lot of power. And if he can catch you early, which he unfortunately for Nico he did, he's going to finish it. So, but again, another cracking fight, and that was like a main event. And then we got the rematch, the Glenn Pettigrew Jack Della rematch that we were also excited about. There was so much story to that. It was like 3 years ago they fought on Rain for the title, with Jack getting the win there. And then Jack beat Ty Duncan, who's a close friend of Glenn's, and then Glenn beat Josh Della and went on a bit of a tear since losing to Jack. They both had identical records of 7-2 when they faced off for the second time. Glenn had beat a man that had beat Jack. Glenn beat Alden in his last fight to get the title shot. So yeah, everything was lined up perfectly for a grudge match, and again, it didn't disappoint. Glenn.
Yeah, that was another fantastic fight. Glenn started off really, really, really powerfully. Started to fight off really impressively as well. Causing Jack a couple of issues, and maybe Jack had to check himself a little bit and bite down in the mouth guard. But it was another absolutely fantastic addition to a great card. Yeah,
and Jack probably, again, it's another one I could sound like a bit like a proud parent moment, but Jack cemented himself firmly at somewhere amongst the top of the tree in the welterweight division in Australia, and he's since been signed by Paradigm Sports Management. So we trained, or we went hit some pads on the beach last weekend, and I know he's pumped and he's keeping himself in shape and he's ready to go as soon as all this shit is over and done with, and he's got the bit between his teeth and he wants to get stuck back in. But yeah, the Perth event was spectacular. Like it was, we've got such a great stadium there. The atmosphere was amazing, and yeah, like you say, one of the best, probably the most stacked card we've ever put on in Perth.
Yeah, without a doubt.
The fights delivered. I mean, we were out of there. We started a little bit early, but we were done in the venue by 9:30. It was crazy.
Yeah. No, the speed of some of the finishes and the way that we rattled through the fights did make it a short night. We were out of there early, and
I don't think anyone left disappointed though. Like that.
No, without a doubt, it was fantastic, and I really enjoyed the early start. And the same again the next week in the Gold Coast, we had an early start again, and I think that's something that we'll look to implement. It definitely helps with televised events for everyone across Australia to be able to watch it at a decent time and not sitting up to 1 or 2 in the morning waiting for it to finish. But I like the early starts and the early finishes.
Yeah, same. It's good. It's good to get it cracking. So then, obviously, two big ticket selling events onto the third, which was actually in the Gold Coast, and it was sold out before I got on the plane, which was fantastic. You know, it's always nice to have to know you're not scrambling around for ticket sales in the last few days. So I hopped on the plane on Wednesday afternoon, or Wednesday morning. I arrived Wednesday afternoon, and we just got straight into fight week 3. We've got the best setup down there in the Gold Coast with the Mantra Hotel on site at the Sharks. You really get that fight week feel there because there's so many fighters around the hotel and people in the gym using the gym, cutting weight, and in the restaurants and coffee shops around there. You know, you're always surrounded by your fight family, and I actually really like it. It sort of reminds me of the Cage Warriors days where we used to take the whole team everywhere we went. Bit easier in the UK because you can drive, or catch the train. You know, there's no flights involved. But yeah, you really start to get that big show feel in the Gold Coast, I find.
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic, Southport Sharks is obviously where Eternal One was, and, it's good to still be there 8 years later and using the facilities, and the facilities growing there with the addition of the Mantra, obviously. We've got the sauna there, you say, we've got the cafes and the restaurants, and it's like all Fight Village. It's fantastic. Yeah. And, 52, again, done what we didn't think it probably could do, and that was keep up with the quality of fights and performances that we had in Eternal 51. With some absolutely standout performances on that card. But, circling back quickly as well, that's probably the first time where we've actually had to physically shut the doors and not let anybody else into an event. Quarter past 5 on Saturday afternoon. That was it. We were not allowed to. We were at the limit for the venue's capacity legally, so we couldn't let anybody else into the venue. That was a fantastic achievement, and it's probably testament to the fighters that were on the card. People want to see them. People want to buy tickets to come and see them. So every single fight on the card, be proud of yourselves.
Yeah.
Looking at that, at the amateur section of the card, again, it was another decent sized card with 8 amateur fights on it. I think we had a couple of really good standout amateur performances by Odin Musket from Shindo in the flyweight division. Yet again, he's just a young kid who's starting to look better and better every single fight. And Josh Kuhn as well. Josh Kuhn, welterweight, went to 3-0 with another quick finish. I don't think his 3 fights have added up to 5 minutes yet. But there's a lot of good amateurs coming through in the Gold Coast. Scene. That's pretty good. But again, the main card, the televised section was, all the fights on it were bangers. They were all absolute cracking fights. It was really good to
on Josh Kuhn real quick, but he's a full package. He's got he can fight. He brings extreme violence to every fight that he's in. Some people
heavy hands.
Got heavy hands. He's got skill. He loves it. He's a bit like Casey in that regard. He's intense, but he loves it. Like he wants to be in there. It shows, and I think that's daunting.
Josh is a really interesting character in the way that he's so successful in his business life that he could easily be sitting back and taking the easy route through life and living the dream, doing whatever he wanted to do, going wherever he wants to go at any point in time. But he doesn't. He wants to fight, and he's starting, at the very bottom. He's third amateur fight. He realises what he's got to do, and he's got a restricted timetable to get there because of getting into sport a little bit later than a lot of other people because he was building his businesses. But the amount of hours that he actually sets aside and puts into his is really commendable considering the other things that he's got going on in his life. It's good.
For me, they're the most dangerous guys. They don't do it for the money. Like a lot of guys fight. I need a paycheck. Blah blah. A lot of guys fight for that little bit of cash. He does not care a shit about a purse, making money off of fighting at the moment. It's all about doing it for the love of the sport. And they're the dangerous ones because they don't need to be there. They don't need to be in the gym every day, but they still go.
Yeah. So it's going to be exciting getting back up and running in the Gold Coast, and helping develop these guys a little bit more, getting Josh, your Roden Muskets, etc. back onto cards. But yeah, look, kicking off the pro card, we had John Fraser and Candy Atta, another one of your boys, and making the switch.
Brandon, Raphael Filches and Cody Watson.
Sorry, yes, of course. We had the Wolf and the Savage. It was the first fight. I skipped past that one, which was, But both of the boys are always in exciting fights. Cody Watergo's fights are some of the most violent and exciting fights you get on Eternal cards. He again is another one who just loves it. He just loves swinging leather and standing in the pocket. And Raphael Vilches was obviously a very accomplished striker with a decent Muay Thai background, moving into MMA, and he's looked very impressive as well. And that fight was fantastic. Fantastic way to open the card.
Yeah, and the striker winning by triangle in the end.
Yeah, I know. Who would have thought it?
I actually have an MMA win by triangle as well, and I didn't know any jiu-jitsu, so it must be a thing.
It must be. Then we had, obviously, John Martin Fraser and Can. John Martin Fraser's looked fantastic since he's dropped down to middleweight. He's got to be in line for a shot at the middleweight title as well, we would imagine. We're looking to put that together as soon as we can. And he had a quick finish. Just one of these things.
Khan's one of my fighters as well, and he has an accomplished Thai boxing record. You can't read too much into that fight other than it was an amazing punch that knocked Khan into next week. But Khan is good, and I thought that fight was going to be a cracker. But in MMA, with 4-ounce gloves on, big boys, they're 90-odd kilos when they step into the cage, get landed on the chin and then 4-ounce gloves, and it's no nights, That's just how it is. And that left hook he threw was beautiful. It was like something from Mike Tyson. And there's another Welsh fighter, the white Mike Tyson, John Phillips, who's very similar to John Fraser. So yeah, John's exciting guy. He's training under Kyle Noak. He's got the knowledge and the experience to take him to the levels that he needs to get to. And he obviously possesses the power there down at middleweight, and he looks in good shape and he's ready to go. And it was, for me, it was obviously terrible because my boy was on the receiving end, but I sit back and admire what John did because I know how good Khan is.
Yeah, no, it was a really good win, and as I say, I think it catapults John Fraser into the title contention anyway, which we've already had a quick word with him about. So then probably after that we're moving into flyweight females with the return of Rhiannon Thompson from Tasmania. She stuck her hand up and was looking to make a comeback in MMA, and she couldn't have got a much more difficult comeback into MMA than fighting Chelsea Hackett, who's obviously on an absolute tear at the moment as well. Rhiannon's a name that a lot of people recently might not have heard of, but she's a great pedigree. She's a decent record. I think she's 5-2 coming into that fight. She's fought some fantastic Australian fighters, and Arlene Blencoe. I'm pretty sure she fought Jessica Clark. She fought Kanani. Yeah, she's fought a lot of people over a few years. But that was another fantastic fight. Rhiannon looked really good in the first round. Took Chelsea's back, but it showed the development of Chelsea. She was very composed when Rhiannon had her back and just waited her time, and then come back in the way that Chelsea does. High intensity, a lot of strikes. Fight went to decision, but I think Chelsea clearly done enough in the second and the third rounds to take the decision. It was another really nice performance.
Yeah, but a real testament to Rhiannon. I mean, we all know how good Chelsea is. She's a world champion Thai boxer who's really translated well into the grappling side. She's got a strong offensive grappling game now. She's got out of some sticky situations in her fights in submissions and stuff like that. So she's starting to show the well-rounded pedigree that she'll need. And yeah, Rhiannon didn't take a backward step, and it was just another epic.
Yeah. It's another fantastic fight to watch. We don't get very many boring girls fights, female fights anywhere. You know, girls seem to bring it, no matter where they're fighting and at what level. But yeah, that's definitely another one that people should go back and watch.
Yeah, I mean, both those shows, 51 and 52, are well worth getting yourself on Fight Pass. And while we've all got time, there's not a bad fight on them. So if you want to watch the show and you haven't seen it yet, jump on there. You know, it's high level, and
yeah. Then we had two title fights. We had the featherweight strap, which was vacant and was up for grabs. And originally it was meant to be in Perth, but we lost a fight and we moved it across to the Gold Coast. And realistically, there's one featherweight that's probably fought on Eternal. Turned out some really good performances. Diego Pereira. So Diego was obviously fighting for the title against Jack Jenkins. And what was yet again another absolutely fantastic fight. Both boys put absolutely everything in. It was short time, but Jack Jenkins came away and he's a new featherweight champ after another fantastic fight. Diego took a lot of damage in that fight, and after the fight we only found out the extent of how bad some of the damage was that he took. He ended up with a broken leg, and I can't remember what else did he break. He broke something else as well. What, sorry?
Did he have a broken jaw?
Yeah, broken jaw and a broken leg, yeah. And he'd been fighting on with both the injuries, and it was only when a rear naked choke got applied and the arms across the jaw that Diego was obviously very sensible and tapped out in that position.
Yeah, Diego obviously coming off that massive head kick knockout of Michael Tobin, who has had the best record anyway in Australian MMA in recent times. So for Diego to get that win really sort of gave him the confidence. And he fought a smart game plan in that fight. And him and Jack were going back and forth. You know, it wasn't one-way traffic by any stretch of the imagination. But Jack Jenkins, you know, we've been looking at getting him on Eternal for a long time, and for one reason or another, it's never sort of panned out. So it was really nice for us to finally get him on, and you know, it's unorthodox that someone would get a title shot in their first appearance for Eternal, but because of the back and forth that we'd had and how many shows we tried to match him on and how many people had pulled out on him and stuff like that, across his sort of our attempts to get him on Eternal, it seemed right that, you know, he's always been professional, he's always been a joy to deal with, really, and he understands the game and what a fighter needs to bring for a promoter to want them on the show, you know, and to have someone, a consummate professional like that as a champion, I feel like all our champions are like that.
Yeah, no, he's a fantastic champion for us to have, and it is good to have him on board now. But yeah, another fantastic fight. Then after that, we obviously had the main event.
Let me stop you there. First ever Eternal fight to go into the fourth round.
Yes, of course. Sorry. Yeah.
History there.
Yeah, which was fun as well because we realised about the round cards when
3+1.
No, we were. That was flashback to Eternal 50. We were heading out to New Zealand, and only then we realised that we didn't have 4 and 5 round cards and had to get 2 made up pretty quickly. Which another one of our fantastic sponsors, Ads On, managed to do for us. So.
Yeah, that was one small detail that we overlooked in the madness that was 52. Then we had so we had 3 title fights, not 2 yet, 3 title fights. Because then we had Shannon versus Josh
Togo. Yeah.
Josh for me has come on leaps and bounds in the last couple of years, and he's just so composed. He knows what his game is, and he knows how to use it. And he's going to be a tough prospect for anyone to overcome because he just plays the game that he has so well. And when he hits you clean, you know, and he causes damage. You know? It's very, very strategic. You know, you're not going to see Josh getting into a brawl. You know, he's a mover. He's a real smart fighter. And again, another real humble, down-to-earth guy who is a very worthy Eternal champion.
Yeah, I think for my money, I think Josh is right at the top of the tree for Australian lightweights at the moment. I know there's some rankings out there that don't necessarily agree with everything that I agree with, but I really think Josh sits at the top of the pile of lightweights in Australia at this moment in time. I think him and BJ Bland are both up there. I think Josh is just edging it at the top. He's had quite a lot of recent composed and accomplished performances against real good competition.
Yeah, I'd like to see those two fight. Like that's one of my sort of dream matches for this year. Is those two fight.
Yep. Yeah, no, that'd be a cracking fight.
And the win against Ben Wall. I mean, Ben Wall has been around forever. He's fought in the UFC. A tough guy, a good grappler. Probably, where he would have wanted to get the fight would have been on the floor with Josh. He would have thought he had the edge there, but he never got near it.
Josh is no slouch in the ground as well. I mean, we've seen Josh against Marcus McKeever, who's another very, very accomplished and very slick grappler, and Josh beat him as well.
Yeah, he got. But you know what? We haven't. And I don't doubt Josh's ground game at all. I mean, the boys at ATT train in every area. They're well accomplished mixed martial artists. We've never seen Josh on the ground.
Yeah,
I haven't, which means that his wrestling game and his ability to fight the fight where he wants to, because Maka never got him down, or maybe got him down for a split second. But Marcus is deadly on the ground. So to avoid that for Josh, Josh is obviously very strong in the wrestling department, which allows him to have his game the way that he wants, and it played out for him. And yeah, like I say, I'm really, really proud to have him added to the stable of our champions. Not just great fighters, but they're all great people. They all represent our sport really, really well. That's what makes me so proud of all our champions. And then speaking of champions, we then had Shannon Ross versus Stephen Erceg, which was, unorthodox to put the lighter weight as the main event, but just the gravity of that fight, where Shannon stands as a popular guy on the Gold Coast and Australia wide as well, and then the rise of Stephen Erceg in the last performances has just been exceptional.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that fight didn't go the way a lot of people would have seen it going. Having known Stephen and obviously being from Perth as well, I had a feeling it might go that way. I just think Stephen is top of the food chain. I really do. I don't know what your thoughts were going into.
Look, I had no idea how that fight was going to go. Shannon was looking absolutely fantastic. With every single fight, he seemed to be getting better, just a little bit sharper, a little bit more defined movement. His striking's always been beautiful. His wrestling's so good. And he's been doing this a long, long time. There's very few people still fighting in Australia that have paid their dues as much as Shannon has, fighting in shows all the way from 2010, 2011 at multiple weight classes. I mean, I think Shannon's even fought up at featherweight at one point as well. And he's not a big flyweight, so there's very few people in the country that I would think would be able to best Shannon on any given night. And Stephen Erceg was one of the people I would think that, he's definitely got the ability to do it. Whether or not he would have been able to do it, I wasn't sure. I really did think Shannon's striking and his movement is too much for most people. But Stephen Erceg looked super impressive. I mean, you look at his last few fights as well, he's finished Tim Moore, Paul Wolger, and now Shannon Ross. He's racking up the names.
Spectacular, really. And, I don't think Steve will mind me saying this, but I think a lot of people take Stephen at face value. Like, you look at Steve and you hear him talk, and he's the mellow, unassuming, humble. He doesn't look like a fighter, whatever a fighter looks like. But, if you stood him next to Shannon and asked 100 people to say who's going to win in a fight between these two, Joe Public, they're going to pick Shannon just on looking at the guys, and that's not how fighting works. But but what Stephen can do, and the brain power and the technical ability he possesses, and obviously the power. I mean, he knocked out Paul Loga, which not many people get close to even hurting Paul Loga. Yeah. He dropped Shannon with one shot.
I think it was that. I think it was that shot that that shot was the turning point in the fight.
Yeah, and Steve's obviously his timing, because he's not windmill, so his timing and his technical ability generates the power. But it's brilliant to watch, and I feel for Shannon, I really do, because he was at the top of the food chain, sort of knocking on the door of the big show. And, I feel for him, but I think he needs to come back, and he needs to right the wrongs and get back on the horse, because he's so good. I mean, he has so much talent.
Well, just looking across Shannon's social media, by the looks of it, he's got the bit between his teeth again, and it's just
I look forward to that.
coming back.
That is even more of a sign of character, is kind of picking yourself back up. He hadn't lost for so long. He's got to pick himself up, dust himself off. One loss doesn't make you a bad fighter at all, and I think that is very bright for him. And I don't think. I wouldn't begrudge him a rematch. I think he whether he gets one or not, we have to discuss that and see the validity of that. But I wouldn't begrudge him it. If anyone deserves it, he deserves it.
Of course.
But that all remains to be seen when we watch up and get out of the other side of this.
I mean, a lot of future fights are going to depend on location as well, and what happens with cross-border travel.
Yeah, and then getting audiences back in building. Yeah. So, there's a lot to be done, and a lot of water to go under the bridge before we get back to any sort of normality, I think. But at least the future's starting to look a bit brighter, and things are starting to calm down a little bit, and there's much less cases going around.
Yeah, well, we're getting some restrictions lifted in Queensland as of next weekend. I think from midnight next Friday, there's a few of the restrictions start to get lifted. So hopefully that'll keep happening as time goes on, and we'll get back to normality. Yeah,
definitely. But look, to put a sort of conclusion on that was three of the best weeks in our history. It was fucking stressful, like no doubt about that. It was.
We love it.
We do love it, yeah, and having it sort of taken away so soon after that.
Yeah.
It sort of reaffirmed after a week, I was ready to go again. And because we had a big gap in between our next scheduled show, I was like, how am I going to last this long until that next show comes around? Because I fucking love it,
I've definitely had a hangover after the Gold Coast show. You're sitting about thinking, I wish I had fight week again this week. I wish I had fight week again this week. Yeah. We obviously didn't. There's only so much we can do, though.
Yeah, we don't want to overstretch ourselves, but we always do. But yeah, this one thing, this coronavirus has made me grateful of the opportunities I do have for my work. I legitimately love my job, like my two jobs. Running gyms, coaching fighters, and running fight shows. I don't know how I've managed to put myself in that position, but I fucking love it.
Well, I'm sure it'll come out in future podcasts. How you got yourself into that position, but
yeah. So that's the plan. So we're going to wrap this one up today. We're about an hour in, which is kind of what we're going to aim for. But what we'll do is we'll start chronicling now. Now we've wrapped up sort of the unsaid stuff that we never really got a chance to speak about those three shows. So we're going to start chronicling like the history of Eternal, how it came to be, and how we came to be a partnership, and get these shows going, like 10 shows a year, 11 shows a year. Some years, I think we did 12 in 12 months once.
Yeah, we've done 12 in 12 months twice. I think we've done back to back 12 in 12 months. So
we'll get into all that. There's been some funny stories, and there's been some funny moments where more than I care to sort of think about, really. But it's quite a remarkable story, I think, that we've got to just sort of plodding along. We never really planned to be here. Well, I know I didn't. I was really reluctant to do shows, as Cam knows. But he taught me.
I'm quite persuasive.
Got life for the Eskimos, this guy. So we'll get into all that stuff, and then we'll bring you some guests too. So it's good to be back on the podcast. We'll make sure this is a regular thing. Please, if there's anyone you want us to speak to, if there's anyone you want us to talk to, anything you want us to discuss, anything you want us to go over, drop us a message, and we'll make sure we address it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Hit us up either on Facebook or Instagram. That's the Eternal Instagram and Eternal Facebook. We both get the messages. So yeah, reach out. But
Yeah, perfect. All right,
thank
we'll
you
let
very much.
Sam get back to his studies because he's got to be on point for his week next week, and I've got chores to do around the house, no doubt. So I'll catch you all next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.